because you know that process.
Welcome, 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 everyone, to the Women's Empowered Network. I am so excited to have another guest with us today. And today we have Marni. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Great. I am so glad you're here, and I'm excited to get to know you and to share you with the group. So, if you would tell us a little bit about who you are and a bit about your story and journey that led you to what you're passionate about today.
Thank you. I will. I have worked with people my whole life. Not in technology, but just with people, looking after people in long-term care for very, very many years. And currently, I work in a group home here in Campbell River. Thoroughly love my work, enjoy my work, and love looking after people. And what brings me to my passion, which is end of life care, is losing a few people in my life and that changing and resonating with me over my life. My stepfather, my mother, my grandmother, and then after those people passed away, it was kind of ringing bells for me. And what I mean by that is that my curiosity about end of life, not a lot of people were talking about that. And so, anyway, it's just kind of sitting right here all those years. And I worked in long-term care. And of course, we all know what that means in nursing homes and long-term care. People ultimately pass away eventually there, usually. They usually don't get moved around very much when they're there. And so I had, many opportunity to work with lots of people, grew close to the people that I looked after, grew close to many teams that I worked with as well. And so right around in 2016, 2017, I had a friend reach out and she mentioned that, I should take this end of life death doula course through the Conscious Dying Institute out of Boulder, Colorado. And so anyway, at that time I didn't look into it, and then I had like a lifestyle change and moved over to Vancouver Island from the mainland and dug into that and looked into it and found out that I would love to go and do that training, and as I've mentioned that end of life work, we all do end of life work with people, when we sit by someone's side or stay with people as they're passing or be with them in their diagnoses of end of time. And so it just grew and grew. And then as I've gone through the last couple of years of my life, I just really focused on that, and it just kept resonating, and it just, of course, still sitting right here and laying itself across my lap, as I've said before, that it doesn't go away, and it's meant for me to pay attention to it. It's a light that it's right above my head, and it never ever stops shining on me. I believe that it's a path that's meant for me. And I talk openly about it, and I talk death positively, and that's not necessarily meaning that, I'm jumping around like a crazy person, woohoo, that's not what I mean. I mean that
Right.
I'm, yeah, I'm an open person about it. I find it easy to talk about, and it's not swept under the rug for me anymore. It used to be, absolutely, because it can be an elephant in the room, so to speak. So yeah, that's what brings me here today. I am I have my own business called Paradigm End of Life, and if anybody would want to reach out to me, they could. I also talk about legacy work. Legacy work is part of the work that gets done prior to someone passing away or even having a diagnosis. You can do legacy work in your living, and not necessarily just in your dying. You can do it in your living as well. And so that's a really powerful thing that helps a lot of families, and it helps a dying person as well.
And I had recently had to go through this with my late husband who had a long-term illness. And I remember all the hospice nurse, your special breed. Um, they were all so kind and so patient and caring, even though they know that this person wasn't going to be here. And I noticed too, it's kind of interesting. uh, I would not have really had any awareness about any process at all at the end of life had it not been a friend of mine who was Buddhist.
Mm.
And her mother was dying, but her mother was teaching her daughter about the process as she was getting ready to transition herself. It was like
Wow.
just matter of fact, it's like, okay, this is what's next. This is what needs to be done, and even to the cremation process. So through osmosis, she would share with me, every day because we work together, how unique that process was.
Right.
And I thought, how beautiful and less scary. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And dying people can teach you so much in such a short period of time. And I talk about this with my friend Tammy Scarlett. There's magic and mystery. There's lots of magic and mystery in death and dying. And like I said, not necessarily even just sitting by someone's bed. It's just the whole thing is just so incredibly it's mystery. It's mysterious. It just it never stops being something that I can't see. I just see it. I just that just caring at the end of life is just something that I'm made for, I believe. Yeah.
so I'd like to ask, so people, because like I know for my late husband, he was very, very afraid because he didn't have any religious or spiritual beliefs at all. Um, so whether people do or not, I mean, are you able to help them come to terms with it? I'm sure there's a lot of fear around it.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty big thing. It's often the elephant in the room, and people and even though the elephant's in the room, it usually doesn't get spoken about until it's like you're in it and it's big and scary. And like you said, he didn't have any religious beliefs or anything kind of to hinge on. And I was speaking about that earlier on with somebody that it's my job as an end of life doula, death doula to be with people, even regardless of what culture they are or what they believe, what they don't. There's so many beliefs and religions and cultures, and everything is beautiful. And that's the job of death doulas. That's what we're taught is to um, have zero focus in on what we believe
Right,
to put out onto someone else. It's not our dying and it's not our time. And our job is to hold the space. And sometimes, someone like that might not know how to move forward or how to get through the mud and the sludge, the scary, the big fear, the big thing. And that's the job for me because often families have a hard time. And of course, your families, right? So,
right.
um, it's a different space to be in, and so it can help families as well, but you can also help someone in their dying. And so yeah, there's all kinds of things that you can do to help someone really come to not come to grips with their mortality, but pretty much. Does that make sense?
But yeah, but of course, that answer just brings up three more questions.
Right.
So if somebody's in fear, I mean, how do you, because how do I ask the question? This is interesting. Um, do you have a set of beliefs that you share with them to help them? Or, do you orient yourself to wherever they are to help them?
That's exactly what you do. Yeah. You orient to where they're at and you work through it. I mean, we often all go through, say, counseling or, you're working things out, you're having a talk with somebody. And what my job is in that, like, I don't want to say job, but I mean, my focus would be is to help them work through it and help to answer their own questions and to try to figure out what it is that would be comforting and to facilitate bringing that comfort to them when they've actually answered their own question, because at the ultimately for people that are dying, generically, it's like, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to my body? You know, I'm scared, I'm embarrassed. My body is this, my body is that, my house is this, my house is that. And so that is something that I help them work through, you know, at the end of their life. And you actually, like I said, you help people find the answers to their own questions and help facilitate, you know, some comfort towards that and whatever it might be, and that's the beauty of legacy work and doing that legacy work ahead of time without being in a dying or in an act of dying or whatever. You can work through that and with someone like me, and it actually can morph you into, being so much more braver and open to what is going to be ultimately at the end.
And one of the gifts that came out of it for me with my experience with my late husband is he died with his dream still in him. He didn't get to realize it.
Oh my
And so
God.
what it did for me is it got me to think about my immortality and end of life, and what would I regret the most if I didn't do it, which actually helped me today to be here.
Good.
Um,
Yeah.
so I could even see it being a tool for somebody to be open to looking at it because it's inevitable. I mean, it's part of the game. It's part of this reality anyway, depending on your beliefs. Um, that it can be a really a gift and getting your house in order, so to speak. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know. And the other thing too is the family resisting. Like I try to talk to this with my older son, and he has so much resistance to me talking about it. So I kind of like had to, how do you say, I don't want to say sneaky, but I had to come from the back door, so to speak. And it was kind of like I shared with him things about how my life is set up, you know, so that he's not coming in because, as you know, some people don't get warnings, you know.
Yes.
So I tried to educate him as much as I could
Yeah.
about my life and about what I had and where it is and what I care about and what I don't care about. So it's a tough conversation, but for me, I have peace of mind. I did as much as I could,
Yeah.
and I write a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. So it's not just, for anyone who's listening, it might sound kind of morbid, but to work with somebody like you because you don't even know what you need to think about.
You don't. No. And I spoke, I've spoken about that a few times, is that, things change when you make plans. And so say for me right, right now, I did this project while I was in doula school, and I did this project where, part of the legacy work was, like, where do you want to be when you die? Where do you want your body to be? How do you want it to be? And of course I was like, oh, well, I just would, because I'm accommodating. I'm just gonna clean all this up and sell all my stuff, and I'm going to pack this whole thing up, close this house down, and I'm gonna move home, to my family where they're on the mainland, in the Okanagan, and I'll just be near them, and then it'll just be easier for everybody, right? Well, that changed. That changed because as I went through this training, I came to the end of this training and I just thought, what am I doing? Like, who am I thinking about? Am I even thinking about myself? Right?
Right?
And of course I didn't want to burden them. I didn't want to have them have to come and close my house down, which is considerate. You can do that still. Look after all your social media, all your whole online presence is another big thing now, especially in death and dying. I mean, people are all over the place, and some people want to leave it and some people want to close it. But it changed my tune. Like I was just like, what am I thinking about? So then I was like, no, no, no. The window I want to be looking out is my bedroom to the forest, which was right outside my window. I had deer in my yard. I had wildlife all around me. I had hummingbirds at my window. I had the sunshine on my front yard. And this is where I love to be. And everybody that knows me knew and knows that. And so I just thought, nope, that's changed. So, I mean, that kind of thing, right? It would be like, I'm going to wear this nightgown or I'm going to wear this nightgown, right? It changes and you're allowed to change your mind, but that's the beauty of helping someone decide. So, yeah, when you legacy plan and you plan for that, it's not written in stone, as I've said before. And it really helps families. And I'll use this as an example as my son lost his father mm, in 2023 in
Oh,
October.
wow.
Yeah. And they were estranged. And so he lost his father and suddenly, well, not suddenly, but shockingly because they were estranged. So it was a surprise. And anyway, he didn't leave anything behind for him and to give any idea or direction. The only direction is that any life insurance he had at the current job that he had, that he was giving, that life insurance to the neighbor. And so that was the only direction he had. There was nothing else, but everything was disastrous and it was really hard. And that's the kind of cleaning up, if you will. You can look after all your business, all your ideas, your funeral arrangements, and you don't even have to make funeral arrangements, just ideas down. If you just, write stuff down, plan out a little bit, and
Right.
just come to terms, right? And doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, because nobody's dying is perfect. Everybody's dying is different, and it just helps a lot for people that are left behind. So I think that that's my big message is that any legacy planning, also too, helps people, know who that person was. Not everybody that knows that person knows about their past or who they actually are. So that's really
Well,
important.
right. Especially like a mother, your children don't know you as a person. They know
Right.
you as their mother.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Yeah. So even doing a memoir uh,
Yeah.
sounds fascinating now that you've brought that up again.
Right. Yeah. And, and it brings me back to that movie, The Bridges of Madison County. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie before with Meryl Streep and Clint Eastwood.
It's been a long time. I don't remember it, but
It's beautiful. And anyway, this woman, she documents, her daughters go through her stuff at the end of her life and they find her journals and they didn't know who she was. They really didn't know who she was in her heart and what she went through, in the movie or a love she had or, like just that kind of stuff, which is such a gift, right? If you can help without being left behind like that, I mean, it's just so amazing. And it's just a little bit of work. Yeah, it's hard. But I mean, using someone like me can be helpful and less scary. And it's personal. It's
right.
personal, it's private. As mothers, as we have, children that don't know everything about us and they don't have to know everything about us, but it helps them really understand who you were. And I don't think that we ever really get that chance.
I love this. I love this conversation. I mean, because I was kind of thrown into it. I think if you haven't lost anyone yet in your life, it's not on your radar. It's
No.
not something you think about, but you don't want to be in a position that it just all of a sudden happens and you're like caught flat-footed, like, that's really scary. I
And
mean,
Ginny, it happens all the time. I mean, nobody knows when their time is. I mean,
mm-mm.
you and I can have this conversation and like, anything could happen to anyone at any time. And so we don't know anything about that.
No, and I mean, fortunate for me, my husband sounds kind of strange the way I said that, but he had an extended illness. So it wasn't a surprise that it was coming. It was a
Mhm.
long, drawn out process. So it gave us time in small increments to talk about things because it was just so scary for him. So I had to do them in tiny little sound bites.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Little increments. Yeah.
Very much. So so in a way, it was kind of a blessing that it was drawn out because he had, his whole there was a life he had before me, that and his childhood friends and
Yeah.
relatives and everything that I hadn't even met yet. So
Mhm.
um yeah. And two, I think it's an opportunity, when you were talking about it, your son and being estranged from his dad, just having this conversation, you and I, and hopefully people who are seeing this, that giving them an opportunity, what comes to mind is just even writing a letter. You may not give it to them, but, write them a letter and just keep it, so it's there.
Yes. Yes. Anything. I mean, often people are left with absolutely nothing. He was left with absolutely no clue on what direction to go, and by the time we found out and to deal with his body, um, so much time had gone by that he had to have him cremated and, he had nothing to go by. So he had to make some decisions and it was hard. And he was 30 at the time. It's hard, right?
Oh,
So
yeah, especially at that age. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's so far off your radar.
yeah. I mean, and I was a lot younger. I was 23 and very pregnant when my mom got diagnosed with her metastatic brain cancer. And I went through the last couple of months of my pregnancy with that knowledge. And then when my son was 6 months old, she died. And so that whole
Oh,
period of time, yeah, it's just like it was kind of enveloped in that whole thing. Um, and so she had plans. She had made a plan, and because she got a diagnosis and she was given about a certain amount of time, and she made plans, and we difficultly took her. It was hard. It was hard, but she knew that she had some ideas about it, the things that she wanted and what she didn't. And so she spoke about that, and so they were all honored. She got everything she wanted, and and yeah, it's still hard, still sad.
right. Well, you were so young, and then, here you have new life starting, that you thought
Yeah.
your mother would be a part of all this new journey with you,
Hmm.
and she wasn't.
I feel like, yeah, and I feel like she's forever connected because when I did have him, I was put out and I had a C-section and he was actually held by her before I was. So she got to visit him. She was just on the outskirts of the town I lived in, and so my sister brought her and she got to hold him in the nursery and I was still sleeping, I was still out. And yeah, so they got to see each other and he got to meet her and of course he doesn't remember, but I mean I think that she's probably imprinted on him a little bit, right? And so it's special.
That is very special. Well, I want to be sure to let the audience know that if they want to get in touch with you, and we will put it above this interview and in the comments, how can they get in touch with you?
They can reach out to me through on Facebook here, and then on my Facebook you can send me a message, or you can send me an email and I'll post that in the comments, or you can add it to the stuff that goes above this interview at
Right.
paradigm end of life at gmail.com.
I love that. This has just been such a fascinating question, and I mean, interview, and just it's kind of like a flashback for me, because I was thinking about when my parents died, um, and then when my husband died. So, I have some reality on it, but I know a lot of people do not. And just the other added benefit that we talked about earlier is it's starting to think about those things. Just maybe not even so much your own end of life, but what do you want to be true about your life? What maybe have you been putting off, that you think you got all the time in the world, and you don't realize you may not, that you
Yeah,
really
like
want to
what
get it done.
conversation, what relationship do you want to heal? What conversation do you want to have? What idea do you want somebody to know about? It's up to you. And a lot of people just, and I believe it's slightly generational, It comes from, it being tucked away under the rug, in the closet, in a drawer, in your back pocket. It's just always kind of right there. And hopefully. people will, embrace what's the word I'm looking for? Embrace the curiosity and just the bravery to think about it and to have a conversation with somebody. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, even earlier this week, sometimes, you get so busy, there's so many details, and I get a little overwhelmed and frustrated. And I literally will ask myself, okay, what is the most important thing to me that I want to have accomplished before my end of life? And I make sure I make time for that.
Yeah.
Um, and I do those things which aren't necessarily tied to my business. They're just personal things that I want to make sure I make time for and that I do it. I mean, for me, it's writing a few books.
Yeah.
So, it could be like that. You can use it as a motivator too,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can open up the conversation in your family.
or try.
All you can do is all you can do is try. Yeah.
Right. So you can be kind of sneaky about it, as I would say. But anyway, well, this has been delightful. And I'm so grateful that you feel so passionate and that you feel called to do this. Because it definitely takes a special person to do what you do. Is there any parting words of wisdom that you would like to share with us today?
I think it might be just, kind of circling back to, if you're in that space and it feels big and scary and you're hesitating and the wits are scared out of you and you have a lot of fear around, just, you can reach out to someone like me and you can um, really get ahead of what could be because like I said, nobody knows what tomorrow brings. They really don't. And so I think that's the word. I think that's the word is just, you know, have conversations with people, talk about stuff, write stuff down like you mentioned. So yeah,
Well, that's been awesome. Well, thank you, Marnie, for being with us today. And we'll be sure to put her contact information so you can get in touch with her. And even if you're kind of curious or just want to have a conversation with her, like we said, we'll give you her email or you can message in her on Facebook. So thank you for being with us today, Marnie.
thanks, Jenny. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.